Let's make some simple journaling cards and tags with supplies you may already have. Hello and welcome to the Treasured Page. I'm Melanie and this is our quiet crafting space. Hello. We are settling in today in a very hot and stuffy craft room here in England on the south coast. It is roasting. I have no aircon, but I just thought, is it too hot to craft? It is a bit, so let's just try and keep it simple. So what you're seeing here is some scrapbooking paper. I've got some decorative paper, which is actually wrapping paper. It is on a really nice paper and it has just been printed on, so it is block printed onto very nice paper. So I often have a hunt around for some pretty wrapping paper, so I've got some here. If you wanted to create something like this, you could have some dyed paper that you may already have, and some black stamps with rubber stamps, silicone stamps, and I would use a black archival ink. And then you could achieve a sheet of paper that looked like that, and that's what we're going to be working with today. The other one here may be a stencil. You could use that and get your colour inks out and have a play with your stencils using a different colour and creating a block print sort of a look. So those are the papers that I'm using today. Now this paper's quite thick, it's almost like a wallpaper lining paper, so you could have a look at something like that and then do stenciling on. Anyway, that's what we are working with, and then these are just decorative scrapbooking papers, but they are the wallpapers from Tim Holtz, and then these are some napkins that I've found in my stash, and they've got script on them, so they must have come in the same pack. One in a gold writing and one in black. But again, if you've got any napkin backs, you could stamp onto napkin tissue paper. Now, I already had these in my collection. They come from a company called Tazzotti Designs. I think it says there. So Tazzotti Designs. And then I've got this one, which is really lovely as well. I found this one in my collection. I can't see that there's anything on it to tell us what it is, but if anybody knows, do leave a comment below. It's really, really pretty with the little seashells. So I thought that's great because that is the coastal theme that I'm working in at the moment. So I just have got these sea greens, the blues, the blacks, the golds, and then these pretty pink seashells coming in. That is the vibe. Now, last time we were looking at our monthly project, which is to make these folding envelopes. They can come and live on a journal page. In fact, it would actually look rather nice if you had a very busy background, because these envelopes just bring a little calming effect when they've been made out of paper like this. So this is vintage ledger, and I've just decorated it with a bit of doily there, and then we've got lace and scraps and all the things from the scrap tray, just having fun putting it all together. It's ended up with 5 pockets, so we've got one at the front, 2 at the sides here, and then one main one at the back there. And if you're fixing it onto a page, you've got a bigger one at the back as well, or you could have it flipping out. So you've got journaling space there, hidden journaling space, and then you've got the rest of your page free. You could hinge it on with a piece of paper. You fold in half, you glue one bit down and the other bit to your page, and that acts as a hinge. So that's how we do that. Now this paper is quite fibrous. It's sort of a handmade paper that you can buy like a specialist paper. So it leaves a fluffy edge. Okay, so I've got those now, not measuring, but they're roughly 3.5 inches, so that would be 9 centimetres. So we're working around that sort of mark. Okay, so tear them down and get a little stack. So I've got these. Now, because this is a thicker paper, it is still very flimsy. Now, you could write on it, but there's also some bobbles on this one. So what I want to do is create a smoother writing space so that these can be journaling cards or tags. And what I think is going to be good here is layering. I think that's going to be nice. I like them to be flexible and soft. I want them to be thin to not add too much bulk to the journal, but I want them to be interesting and to have a lovely tactile feel to them. I just think that that's really fun to have in a journal and something a bit different. So we've got some nice soft papers here because it's a nice handmade paper. And then the other paper that I've got in abundance at the moment. Some sewing pattern paper. I've got this big sheet here which came off of a pattern that was a big dress, and this is just a part of it with no guidance, so there's nothing on, no information on here at all, so it's just plain. Alright, so to create these flexible tags we're going to now need some tissue paper or some sewing pattern paper. I'm using this, I've chopped it down into bite-sized pieces so that I'm going to be able to position my cards on there and glue them down. So that's all I'm doing. I'm going to just line the backs of these, and it may want 2 layers. I think that will look really nice on the edge. So because we're looking at coastal, we're mimicking the look of waves, we're having this organic feel to everything, so we're going to think about different edging and texture, so not straight lines but ruffled, frayed and wavy. So that's what we're aiming for. So here I'm just going to take my papers and I'm going to start applying my stick glue and stick them down onto the pattern paper. So we're just going to do that like that. Now what you could do is you could sew round these at the end if you're confident with your sewing machine. If not, this would look great with just being glued down and giving this a frayed edge. So we're going to just carry on here, leaving a nice border all the way around our little tags, and this could be wrapping paper. Okay, now I've looked at this one and it's already got its corner cut off, so I'm just thinking that's possibly what I should be doing here. Now once you've got them stuck down, you can start tearing them out, and each paper behaves differently. So here we've got a bit that just didn't quite make it, but I'm just going to pull that away. And it's cracking a little bit, but that's okay. We'll just work with what we've got. Okay, this is a nice, uncomplicated, relaxing task. I am just lining my tag paper onto the sewing pattern paper. It's got nothing on it, nothing of interest, so all it's doing is just strengthening up the piece. It's giving it some flexible thinness, but it's also giving it strength, so it's just a lovely feel of paper. Okay, so I've started off with a ragged edge, just tearing them out, but I actually prefer them cut out, and this is now going to just be a nice lining paper. So I'm not deliberately making that straight, I'm still keeping some of the rough torn edge of my original tear from the paper on top. And then the paper below, which is the sewing pattern paper, I'm just cutting it away, but it's so brittle and fragile that it's just falling away. And I'm going to do 2 layers, I think. I like the crinkle, and I like the fact that it's strengthening them up as the project dries. But yeah, this layering look is not working for me. I don't like the paper enough. I think if it had something on it, if it had some text or some sewing paper instructions so that you could identify it, I would prefer it more. So at this point I think it's just best to be a lining paper, and because it's soft tissue paper, it's really quite nice. It's a fun, soft, movable but strong, keeping them really nice and thin for the journal. Now I'm just looking at my tags. They are pretty much dry. I am just tearing off the straight edge of the bottom just to give that rustic detail, because there's a fray to this paper. It's just a fibrous paper on the top there, and it's just adding a nice little fluffy detail, and it is the detail here that is just really important. You can bring that in if you've got a paper with some fibre in it, so it could be a mulberry paper, it could be a rice paper. If you've got anything like that that you can stamp on, you can use that to your advantage and give yourself just that nice little detailed ruffle at the edge, just for a little art detail. I think it's really, really cute. So it's up to you. If you like them straight all the way around, then you're not going to like that frayed detail, but on the other hand, if you've got straight all the way around, then this is quite cool, and you can add a bit of ink as well if you want to. So we're doing that. Now we're looking at a coastal vibe this month, but these tag bases could be for any time of the year, so you could decorate them up in all different colours and different styles, so you don't have to put shells on them at all. You could have flowers and you could have butterflies, and we might do that, but these ones we're going to try and bring them into the coastal vibe. So that's why we've got blue, but you could think along the lines of blue china, so you could have teacups and things on those ones. They look great. So it really is dependent on what you've got. As they're drying with that glue, they are really strong. They're hard to tear, but they're movable and they're lightweight, so they're really fun. Okay, I'm bringing a drop sheet here. You can see I've been doing some paint splatters here, lovely colours, and this is a great piece of paper to use as a scrap. If you did want to line a tag, you could have that on the other side, so you could look to your packaging paper as well. And I thought another paper that would be really good is the paper that's used for paper bags. So if you've got any paper bags that are thin and maybe brown, you could use that as well. It's just a nice thin flexible paper, but it's still strong because it is designed to hold things in a bag, so that's a good paper to think about. Okay, so now I want to have a look at my napkin and my journaling card idea here. I'm going to have a look at this, and I'm going to separate it just using my bone folder to squash the dimples up on one of the corners just until we can see that that's releasing, and then we can pull that apart. This one only has 2 sheets, so it's either had its top one removed or it was only a 2-ply, not a 3-ply, so we've got that. And what I love about this one is that it's got a ghost image on it as well, so that's quite fun. I'll just remove that. I wonder if we can see it if I put plain paper behind. So plain paper behind, we can see a ghosting effect on that scrap middle sheet of napkin paper, so that is awesome. If you ever see some napkins like that, you know that you've got the top coat with the image on it, and you've got the middle one that you could stick down to put over the top. Really lovely. I think that's nice. We might even use that because that's more subtle, so it doesn't detract from the image that I've got there with the flowers. So I could even think along that line. It's a really fun idea. I like the texture that I've already got on my tags though, because that was really nice paper. Now, to get the handmade paper feel, you could use this napkin, particularly because it's got this ghosting effect on it. That would instantly, glued down, make this white piece of paper much more interesting and give it this lovely matte texture, almost like a fibred handmade paper. So that's how you can achieve these details, just through using what you've already got and having a play with your papers, pulling them apart and looking at your supplies in a very different way. So if I put the white behind here, this is obviously a much bolder, stronger pattern, more dominating as well. So you couldn't write over that because you would get lost in the writing that's already there. But I think you could absolutely still write over the top of that because it's so subtle. Hoping that's showing up, but it's just a really nice example to use the ghosting images on the second layer next to the image top sheet that we tend to use for decoupage. Now let's have a look here. Now I think that's just too strong, but when it's wet with the glue it would probably show through, but I would need to have picked a bolder pattern. So I think for this one I'm going to put this to one side and I'm just going to use my scrap sheet from the centre. Alright, so I'm going to play around with the napkin backing, which has the ghosting image on it. I'm going to be using a wet glue, so for this you'll be looking for Elmer's glue, maybe Mod Podge. You could look for PVA glue, school glue, anything like that. I'm using my matte medium collage glue because it dries so quickly for the video, and that is Liquitex matte gel medium. So I'm just going to cover the whole thing because I think that this is quite a nice idea. Okay, so the decorative paper has been covered in glue all the way over. I'm just going to lie that on. Let's try and get it as straight as possible and move that up. And then we should be able to see through it and see if we can get that to really blend in. I've just got to be very careful not to tear the tissue paper unless I want to remove some of it, in which case I'll be a bit more heavy-handed and push it away with the paintbrush. But at this point I just want it to melt into the background, so I'm going over the top with my glue. Now, although you can use a rubber stamp or a silicone stamp with script writing to get this look, what you won't get is the texture, and we're trying to play around with texture on these tags, so this is another way of achieving it. By having the napkin backing, that will give you that feel. So you could put your script stamp down first and then put a plain backing paper over the top, so it would be the first layer you peel off, will not have a ghosting effect. It's just the napkin that I had, it's already been removed, so I didn't have that top one. So we're already using the second layer of a 3-ply napkin. Okay, so we'll just pull that away. This is a really lovely effect, so I just want to keep that. So there you can see you're getting a nice frayed papery effect. It just adds a softness to everything. So that's fun. And I think in hindsight what I would do is I would separate them, maybe even into 3s, and then do the effect again so that I got this edging, this fluffy edging all the way around. Okay, so these have been cut, and now I'm going to paint over the 3 cards that I've got, and I'm just going to repeat the process. I'm putting down a middle layer of my napkin, so you could have a look at what you get if you're pulling napkins apart. It's just a nice little project for one of those middle ghost images that you can sometimes get. Fun if you've got napkin with script writing on it, because it will show up, and even if you're just using some of it and not all of it, that would be fun. It would be a nice detail, so make sure you've got it up with the strongest bit first. I'm gonna lay that down over there like that, so they could go the other way, but in which case I would have put the text around a different way. Okay, and then because it's so damp, it just pulls away really easily, so we can just do that. So while it's still damp and gluey, you can just control how much of an edging is being left, sort of the fluffy detail, and you can just pull it and it comes away while it's damp. So that's how that is, and then we'll just do that, and then they need to be left to dry. So we just carefully take them away, and then you can see on the back, as that one just fell down, you can see that they're just white on the back with nothing of interest, so we'll need to think of something for the back as well, and that's where you could line it with the sewing paper if you've got it, or you could line it again with some more napkin and create a different look as well. So we'll just leave those there, and these are nice because of the theme is the coastal, and they've got that sea green look. So I was very inspired by the colour of sea glass and aquas and blues and teals, and I just thought that that was a really nice colour to have picked out to work within as a background for our coastal seascape that can come on here. And just I thought shells would be the thing to have today, so that's what I'm going to make happen. So this is just a lovely idea to bring in some extra detail to some papers that were otherwise in your collection that you didn't care for or you didn't know what to do with. And we've now created something that is reminiscent of a homemade or handmade paper, and we've brought in a nice effect and detail for our journaling, and it also fits the theme of Charlotte's letters. Alright, so everything is dry. I've got 10 tags here, and then these are my journaling cards, and I was thinking about cutting these into 3 to create 6, but I'm not sure. I've got some offcuts there that could be future belly band side tucks or chop into pockets, so those are just useful scraps. We'll put those to one side. This could become a book cloth, so that could become a little mini booklet or a tiny journal. So there's that. And then these are the dried cards. So they are white on the other side. In fact, all of this needs to have something done to it. So I either put some ink over it, I could stencil on it, I could stamp, I could stain it, but what I think I'm going to do is line it with more of the paper that we've been using, so pattern paper. However, I do have a different paper that is a sewing pattern paper, and this one has been dyed. So this was a very modern one, and it started life as a very clean white piece of paper, which you can just about see there. And then when I was doing some dyeing and staining of my papers using tea and blue ink, I have created this sea green colour, and I was also spraying some silver and watercolour and just having a lovely time. And I had a sheet of plastic down over a large table, and then at the end I just laid this down and mopped it up along with a cloth. So that was some lining fabric that I then mopped up the table with, and have created some interesting byproduct papers and fabric just from one dye session. So that's how I've gone about using my papers and using up the ink. I have got this sheet here, so I'm thinking that this is quite a nice background sheet, and we've got some wording and some extra bits. This is quite fun, saying the tea dress, so I could have that, and I've got loads of it, so I think I will be backing that in this. And so all I would do is put some glue down, and then I will be sticking it under here and cutting them out. So I'm not sure that you need to see that, but just so that you know that that's what I will be doing. But what I want to do is use the heat of the craft room today, because the drying time is reduced when it's this warm. So now I want to make some embellishments for my tags, and I want to have a look at this napkin with the seashells. And I was thinking that I've got some fabric here and potentially some paper, but I'm looking at texture today, and I'm thinking, what are all the different textures that I could bring in? I've got some calico cotton here, there's some linen fabric, and I've got some plain cotton fabric here as well. These are just offcuts and scraps. So I thought that if I get my glue out again, I might be able to put some shells onto the fabric. Now, I'm not sure of the best way to go about this, because the pattern is so dense and close together with the next image that if I use a water brush and try and dampen around, I may end up distorting the image next to it. So I'm thinking perhaps between the two, putting water around and tearing it out and cutting them out on some of the other pieces, I will maneuver around the image that I'm seeing here. So let's just try this. I'm going to try it on an image down here where it doesn't matter because I haven't got the full image anyway. So I'll just damp that down and then see if I can tear that away. It comes away in a really controlled manner, so maybe this is going to work out. I'll just go round again, and it's a bit tricky because this is a smaller piece, and I have just distorted that little shell, and again on the top. So it works for bigger areas, but if you're trying to be precise with it, I've lost the edge there. So I'm thinking for something as pretty as this bigger one here, I'm going to cut it. I can get more control around this shell if I cut it out with my scissors, so I just didn't want to pull and then lose detail, because these are quite detailed images, and also they're very close together. So I'm quietly going around fussy cutting out these images on tissue paper. It's a little bit of a fine piece of work, but it's quite rewarding. And I think with napkin you can get some very detailed images, and it is quite fun to be able to extract these and see how we can use them. They are going to be really thin and add some detail to a project. We can glue them down onto paper and also onto fabric. Okay, I love that shell, and I think it's going to look really nice on this white background. And we only get 2 of those on this particular napkin, and I think I've only got 1 of these napkins. So these were sent to me, and I think I bought them. I could have bought them a long while ago off of a seller. I think I bought these a long while ago from Etsy, a seller on Etsy, and they've come with just the 2-ply sheets. So it is worth having a look and seeing if anyone is selling anything on Etsy if you want to get hold of some napkins and you don't want to buy a whole pack of the same. You might be able to find that somebody is selling some different styles, and you could have a look at all the different ones. So I'm going to now choose this. Okay. Alright, so I am ripping this down, and I'm going to tear that down because I've got these lovely larger shells here, and there were only 2 on that whole napkin that was this style, so that's sweet. And it's a little bit long, so I'm going to just take a little bit off the end there and get my shape like that. Okay, so I've got these in a nice arrangement now, and I'm just going to paste them onto the fabric. So all I'm doing is making sure I'm clear of threads, and I'm brushing this on, and I've just realised there's a slight colorant on my paintbrush, which is blue, thank goodness. It actually is just going to add to the detail, but I am coating the whole fabric and allowing it to soak in a bit, and then that's just going to add to the strengthen up the fabric, and then I'll be able to add in my embellishment piece, which is napkin. And just realised that I have lost the top of that one, so I'm going to pull it off very carefully and put that on again. Okay, now this one I've made a bit of a mess of. I'm going to start off with something smaller and perhaps something closer to me, so I'm just going to add this in. And that one was a bit fiddly. I got my finger caught and I did manage to damage the image, so I'm now working with a smaller image and practicing the technique. A little bit more tricky, but that one's gone down fine. So I'm going to start with the smaller ones and just get this right. So first of all, I am putting down the glue, quite a thick amount, and then I'm putting down my image and making sure then I sweep up over it with enough glue on the brush to cover everything. So that's fine. So I'm happy with that. I mean, this one's okay. The fact that it's torn it doesn't matter. You can still see that it's a shell just about. So those are done. And then this one, is very beautiful and I don't want to mess it up. So again, I'm just putting down a nice lot of the glue, and then that will allow it to move ever so slightly and soak in. So that one is down, and making sure there's enough glue on the brush at all times so it doesn't drag. I think that didn't help my cause there. I'm just going to work around like this. So adding it on, got a bit of blue on the brush, but it's just adding to the colour of the ocean style, the coastal feel that I've got. That's really nice. That's going down there now. Now I'm getting the hang of it, so I'm feeling more confident. Okay, there we go. So it's fun, a little bit of skill involved, certainly some patience. All right, putting down my image here, sweeping over with a loaded brush of glue, moving away those threads, and there we have it. And we can neaten it up when they've dried, but that's how they're coming together. There we go, we're just finishing up the last of these now, creating some really fun embellishment pieces. These could be part of clusters, they can come and be focal pieces onto our journaling cards or our tags. All right, so I've got a lot of things happening here now. What I'm doing is I have left these to dry, and in some cases they've started to curl up, and I think that depends on the humidity in the craft room. So I've got those curling up, but these I have just run over with an iron and they are coming out beautifully and flat. Some of them are looking really great with the frayed edge there as a really lovely detail, and just the different textures of the fabrics that have been used. So this is calico cotton, the sort of thing you can find at like a curtain lining, and then this is the same, so we've got lots here, and then this was a white cotton like a bed sheet or a pillowcase, and that one has come out so well. I really love that. They've all come out well. So there's just a couple here that I have got. I wanted to show you that you can get it curling up, but it's not a problem. You just run an iron over the back of it, a warm iron or a hot iron on a cotton setting, and then they will come out nice and flat, and they'll be able to be used on the different cards, or look like that, could be a little journal starter topper. Lovely, really great. So we've got a mass make of all of these fantastic embellishments now, and the other thing I've started to do is just put down some glue onto my sketch pad here. Now this is watercolor paper, so it's a little artist sketchbook, so just some thicker nice paper, and I'm just adding in these nice embellishments that we've cut out from a napkin, and they can then be something on a journal page like that, so you can see how that can look. And then eventually I might like to cut them out or tear them out and have them as other embellishments. So I'm giving myself some options. I'm just putting this down here, just adding that in with a view to cutting or tearing them out. And I think these are some really lovely ways in which you can make some embellishments out of napkin. Okay, so now again, just so that you can see this, I'm just putting over a wet glue and going to be adding down these journaling cards onto this paper. Orientating it round the right way with the lettering I've got there, just making sure I've got that the right way up, and I'm putting that right on the edge because I can see that there was a little bit of detail on the paper where I've got arrows. I just think that's a little bit of interest. So on some of the tags that I've started, there was a couple of numbers that were printed out onto the backing of the paper. For the sewing paper there wasn't much, but there was just a couple, so I'll show you those in a moment. and then you can see how that looks like with some nice number stamping that you can get sometimes on vintage pattern papers, so that it indicates which paper it was, I suppose. Let's have a look. Here we go. We've got number 13, number 5, and I think, yep, number 14. So I've just added that in there, and that's how that detail can be. So it's quite fun just to have a little bit of stamping, but that was the original off of the vintage pattern. So I'm using a wet glue. Everything is going to curl up. It's incredibly humid and hot in the craft room today, so we're just working like that. But then I think this is quite good for me to show, because there's lots of you that live overseas. Now, depending on the time of year of when you're watching this video and the humidity that you experience in your crafting area where you live, you know, you may find that a stick glue is preferable over a wet glue because they can behave in different ways, but ultimately they are going to dry, and you can always run a warm iron over it just to get that back into shape. So when they dry, they tend to lay flat. It's the moisture that curls up paper. So this is because there's moisture in the air here, and the same because I'm using a wet glue. So to minimize that, you could use a stick glue. However, it may be that you don't get a strong enough bond, which is why it's sometimes really lovely to be able to sew round the outside of tags. That keeps everything together nice and secure and gives the tag some longevity, so you can rest assured that it's not going to fall apart over the next few years. Now, I mentioned at the beginning of the video that the scrapbooking paper I'm working with here is an imitation wallpaper, and it comes in a pack from Tim Holtz. So it looks a bit like that. I don't know if that's showing up, but there's a texture to the paper. And again on the other side, so I'm not working with flat matte paper, I'm working with a texturized paper, and that's why I wanted to have the wet glue to make sure that that sinks into all the little micro dips that you would find on a textured paper. And I will just now put this down, orientating my text that I've put over here with a napkin right way up, and I just want to capture in that wording and a little detail off of this sewing paper here. You can see I've got detail there, so that's gone down. I will be able to tear that out, and then I can sew round and decide if these are going to be journaling cards or whether it's going to be a journal cover. Well, look at this. We've managed to put together quite a lot of mass-made items today, from our lovely fabric embellishments to our really fun flexible tags. So everything's dry. These are super thin and super flexible, and there's beautiful writing space on there and the possibility to stamp or to sew round, and then any kind of topper that you would like to put on there, whether it's lace, whether it's ribbon, whether it's just some simple rustic twine or string or decorative yarn. The list goes on. I'm sure we can think of many, many things. Now, the journaling cards are looking like this, very plain but perfectly fine as they are. You wouldn't really need to add any more to them. They look great like that. A flexible card, again, feels a bit like fabric with the napkin over the top of it. You could trap in a little bit of ribbon, lace or sari silk as you sew round and keep it really plain. Then we've got these on the back, so that was the sewing paper which I had some dye and spray on there, and these were just the offcuts of the napkin, so I've added those to the base there wherever I had one which was sort of cut in half. That would have been right on the edge of a napkin, so I only got a little bit of the detail, and there I've just added those scraps in as well, so I haven't wasted anything of that napkin that I had. You can see we've got some detail there indicating that that was pattern paper for sewing. And then this one, all I had was that little shell left there, but that's great because we've got a nice arrow. So we've still got little writing space there, so reminders or poems, little details, something could be added, fabric swatches, anything really. These are great. but I think I would like to embellish those. And then this, because we've just been making this is now dry. It's going to be a book cloth, a wraparound piece, which I will embellish with one of our gorgeous little toppers here. I think this one's really sweet, so look at that. Or we could have one of the larger shells and have that popping off. These are just great. You're showcasing something that came from a napkin, and then perhaps an elastic or a tie could come out there and put some pages in. Well, this is the sewing paper, the pattern paper that was in there, but I lined it twice to give myself a ragged edge all the way around, so I just went over the top with another sheet, glued that down, and then muted the sewing writing there. And I think, yes, I shall turn that into a little booklet, so that's something that I will create next time. But these are just preparations for the embellishments and things that we can then go on to do with them. So I think that will all come in my next video. This is a wonderful weekend make, so if you wanted to get to this point, you're then ready to go and choose how you might decorate them. We'll have a look at this as an idea. So we've got lots of little shells, but they could be flowers, they could be butterflies, they could be anything that you might find on a napkin. It could be coffee or teacups. You know, you could have leaves or flowers, something where you can perhaps cut the shape out and be able to have them as standalone pieces, put them onto some sort of fluffy textured paper or fabric. Then you can create these little patchwork squares and they can be glued down. So that's my plan. That's what I'm going to do for these. Just you can vary the different looks. You can maybe have smaller ones. So you can have 3. These were all cream, so I thought that they were okay. But then you could have the white, maybe the larger shells, have 2 on there, and then a nice lace on the top. They'll look nice when I've done them. And then this has come out so well. It's on a linen fabric, really nice. It's blended in brilliantly to the weave of that fabric. So if you've got any clothing, any linen, a linen jacket, perhaps you pick that up from Goodwill or the charity shop, or a pair of trousers or something, you could launder them and then you can use this cool fabric. So have a look. This was calico cotton, that's unbleached as well, so you can sometimes find that for curtain lining. But you know, looks great on these tags. You could back it with something else to frame it, maybe a white, and then the cream would pop against the colours. Or just another idea, you know, a layered look for a really artistic little feel to it. So all to be played with. Then you could have larger ones onto these cards. Perhaps that could come as a layered tag, and you could have it like that. Or it could be like this. There's so many opportunities just with the components that you can build here, and you can have a really lovely time piecing it all together with what you've got. So these are really nice ideas of how you can use a busy background paper to create a base for your tag, and then you can put something on it where there's a frame to it and it just sort of pops a little bit. It's just an interesting thing, and you work with what you've got. So this was another idea here where I've put it onto the paper, and that could be a journaling card or a tag, because that could be cut down, so you could think along those lines. I've just put them there as something that I could cut out. Now, had I thought of the idea before I cut them out, I would have just pasted the napkin directly onto the paper and then cut them out like that. But what I wanted to achieve there was little elements like this, so they can come and be on there like that. But again, this is something you may find in a book, so you could cut them out of a paper book or a scrapbooking paper. And this is how you can put some fun summertime journaling ephemera together, using up some supplies that you may already have and creating some very thin, flexible tags and journaling cards. So I hope that this has given you some inspiration to build the components, and I will show you how I'm piecing this together in my next video, which will be coming out tomorrow, and that will be for a special weekend make this weekend. And if you'd like to keep on top of all the projects, do have a look in the playlist for the Build a Signature 2025. You'll be able to follow along in sequence with all the videos that I'm putting out about this spring and summer, autumn and winter journaling that we're going to be doing, building and creating together. Okay guys, so thank you so much for joining me today, and I will see you on my next video when we will be piecing together these tags and journaling cards. Thank you very much, and above everything else, just slow down and make crafting time for you. Bye bye now.